I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes! Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. This is Joe DeMar
and Rebecca Wood.
Rebecca Wood, my co-host, and we are bringing you the show For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment, and we talk about them in terms of how they affect you, your family, your health, your wealth, your happiness. And we've got a really good show lined up for you today. We have a guest calling in at 8:15, and her name is Amy Mohr, and she is the Community Relations Director for TARDA. And we're going to be talking about public transit, regional transit, and the benefits, because they have a issue on the upcoming ballot in Toledo, and we want people in this region, and we want people to learn about that because, as we've said before on many times on this show, public transportation is part of a green future because this whole car culture that we have just has to change. So we'll be talking with her, and then we have we're going to be talking about some developments at the State House. And this week, actually, we do not, for the first time in memory, we don't have an HB6 update. So we're going to be moving on from that. And a little bit about the California wildfires. And we're also going to be hopefully hearing from you at 866-240-1065. Call in at any time. We will stop what we're doing and talk to you about whatever sort of environmental topic you want to talk about. This is the best show in Ohio, but it gets better every time you call at 866-240-1065. So while we're waiting for our guests to call in, I wanted to talk a little bit about something that affects all of us, and that is daylight savings time. I mean, we might be having some listeners today that we don't normally have because we're
very true.
We're an hour later, quote unquote, and people are up who normally are sleeping during our program. Welcome to For a Green Future, and don't worry, you're not on the wrong channel. Sports will be back at 9 o'clock. Mick Gonzalez will be back with the cheap seats. But for just an hour or so here, we're going to be talking about things ecological and environmental. And daylight savings time is an interesting topic. I mean, do you like daylight savings time? Do you think we should be doing it, or do you think we should dump it? Call in at 866-240-1065. And interestingly enough, daylight savings time was created by the Germans during World War I, and that was back when a lot of lighting was done by things like candles and oil lamps, and they were at a war, so they didn't have a lot of candles and oil lamps to spare, so they did this daylight savings time so that some of those vital resources would go into war instead of into lighting people's houses. the U.S. kind of followed suit, and then we sort of did it again in World War II. But the whole notion that you're going to save energy by shifting the hours that people are awake because of shifting the lighting has been a big question. There's a lot of controversy over whether or not this actually works or actually saves energy.
I wonder about a lot of that war effort stuff, like you hear about in this country, like, okay, how much was it so that it would actually help the war effort, and how much was to just sort of to give the civilians something to do so they could feel like they were participating,
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it was partly the psychological value. I'm not saying that's bad, but, know.
Sure, like the wrapping bandages, that was a big thing during World War I, and a lot of those bandages just never got used.
I feel like at least part of it was, or part of the purpose was just to make you feel invested,
Could be. Well, the push for daylight savings time, though, since the reason was supposedly saving resources, which is environmental and ecological, I thought we should take a look at it. And I was looking for different studies and things, and it turns out it's not clear. Back during the George W. Bush presidency, the Republicans passed this 4-week extension of daylight savings time. They said this is our big energy saving thing. This is what we're doing to protect the environment. And they actually had a study in the law. They said there has to be a study to see if this is effective. And so they did the study in 2007, and they found that in terms of electrical use, they saved 0.03% of electricity nationwide because of this shift in the daylight savings time. Unfortunately, there's other studies that say, yeah, you could save a tiny little bit in lighting, but that gets more than made up for by the increases in uses of heating and cooling, because people are up at hours they weren't normally up. And so, when you get up, you turn on the heat. If it's cold in the house in October, for example, or November, get up, it's kind of cold, you crank the heat up.
So that was the original rationale, because somebody told me when I was a kid that it was either something to do with farmers or so that children would not be waiting at the bus stop in the dark or something, which I'm not sure. I think I was waiting at the bus stop in the dark anyway.
Well, yeah, and actually farmers hate daylight savings time.
Oh, okay, maybe not.
Because farmers have to deal with livestock.
It's just something for me that has always been my whole life, and I've never really understood it,
Right.
It's just some crazy thing the authorities do. Maybe it's good and I just don't understand it, or maybe it's just crazy. I can't tell.
I think it is crazy.
Yeah,
I think it may not be something good, because farmers, livestock, unfortunately, don't understand daylight savings time.
No.
No matter how much you explain it to them, they still get up at the wrong time and need milking at the wrong time. And
I had that problem with the dog today, actually. He was all, but my tummy says it's 7 a.m.
Right, exactly. So, and one thing about this 0.03% that they supposedly saved on electricity costs because of lighting, this was done in 2007, and at that time, most of the lighting in households in the United States was incandescent, was the good old-fashioned 60-watt bulb with the filament and so forth. Now, most lighting is being done with the LEDs, which use a tiny fraction, 10% of the power. So the whole big rationale for saving energy, the technology has outpaced that, because now lighting is so energy efficient that the losses from the increased heating and cooling just blow away any kind of savings you get from the tiny little bit of electricity you might use for lighting. So
somebody was also trying to tell me that it's some sort of conspiracy that benefits big business, and that's really why we have it. But I didn't really understand what they were saying either. So, yeah.
Well, you could say literally everything is that kind of conspiracy.
Well, and it is. Whenever you have two or more people, and not all of them are telling all the reasons for wanting to do what they're doing, it's a conspiracy, right? Maybe even if they do openly, it's a conspiracy.
Yeah, no. But
we're in a conspiracy right now.
But I mean, the basic problem is we like comfort, and so we get up in the morning earlier or later, and we turn on the heating or the air conditioning. And
Especially if we have arthritis and it hurts when we get out of bed because it's cold.
Right. Well, I know when I was driving in this morning, with my fantastic van, the hybrid electric Pacifica, which I received no money for promoting, but I just...
He's not being sarcastic. He really loves that van.
I do, yeah. It's a little creepy. But
I wasn't going to say anything.
But my van sensed, because it's so smart, a little too smart, my van sensed that it was freezing outside. It was 32 degrees. And so it decided, oh, well, then you must want your heated seat and your heated steering wheel going.
Right.
And I don't, because I know that resistive heating is very energy inefficient. So that would use up, like heating my seat, my steering wheel would use up a lot of the energy benefits of using my electric car or drain on the battery. So I don't want that. But I have to tell you, it took a force of will to push the buttons to turn them off.
I truthfully do not understand. Okay, the thing about the steering wheel I get, but like why the seat? Are people wearing hot pants this time of year? What I have some layers going on there,
well,
you know. That's a part that I make a special effort to keep warm. So
true. Well, it's a luxury. I
right.
mean, it's
okay.
not. Yeah, it's not a necessity. And some people, I suppose, probably are wearing hot pants these days. I mean, I live in a college town down in Bowling Green, and shorts are there year round. It doesn't matter. 6 inches of snow on the ground. Yeah. But anyway. So daylight savings time, a lot of people now are saying that it's time for it to go, that we no longer need it. And some places, actually some states are starting to get rid of it and just go to standard time all year round. So there may be hope. Of course, this is the one day of the year where everybody likes daylight savings time because we all got to sleep in that extra hour. But you will pay for it in the spring. So, all right. Well, that was just a little aside there, but now we can go on to the one of our main events. We have a guest on the line. Amy, are you there?
I am. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And Amy, would you please tell us what your title is and what organization you're with, and we'll jump right into questions.
Sure. So I'm the Director of Community Relations over at TARDA.
Okay, well, welcome. And we here on For a Green Future are great believers in public transportation, and we promote it all the time. And so I'm glad you came on, Amy. We have some questions because you guys have a ballot issue coming up, and I just wanted to let the people in the region hear a little bit about it and the justifications for it. And could you start us out with what are some of the environmental benefits of public transportation?
Well, I think probably the biggest one is that you look at taking cars off the road because you have people that are choosing to, I guess, share a ride, for lack of a better term, as opposed to getting into their own cars and driving to work, driving to school, or wherever they may be going. That alone, decreases the amount of emissions that are going out into the atmosphere. At TARDA, we have 100 buses, and at any given time, those are in and out. Our busiest times of the day are probably in the morning, and then, of course, the school hours, and then evening rush hour. So that's when you're going to see the most people, taking advantage of that and using the buses as opposed to getting in their cars. We have several workers who use our park and ride services from other communities where they'll park somewhere closer to their house, and then they'll take the express bus to downtown Toledo and either make their connections or go to work down there. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest ones, and the improvement in the air quality that can come with that. Mm-hmm. Over at TARDA, we do some things just on our own to try to make that difference. I don't know if you're aware, but our entire fleet uses biodiesel fuel.
No, I was not aware of that. Mm-hmm.
They do, yeah. So I'm sure that you know what it is, but for those who may not, they talk about it being a clean fuel. So it's basically recycled. And at TARDA, we use 987,000 gallons a year, and we average about 500 miles a year. So we do that because it produces, fewer carbon emissions into the atmosphere. And they switched over to that several years ago, so they've been doing that And,
and
our main facility.
Biodiesel comes mostly from like corn, right, these days.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so is that locally sourced corn? I mean, are people in the farmers in the surrounding counties actually growing the corn that are powering the buses?
That I'm not sure of. Okay. I don't know. I know that they put this in place several years ago to try and, I guess, lessen their footprint.
Well, it seems likely there's a lot of biodiesel factories in this region. So if you're
sure,
it seems likely that you're probably buying that your energy is coming from fields that are in this Northwest Ohio region. That's cool.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, considering the farming communities that are around here, we would have it at our disposal, it would seem. So.
Okay. Well, that's cool. Could you give us now? This Tuesday is Election Day, and so you guys have an issue on the ballot. Could you give us some details about that, and how much is it, and what is the money being used for?
Sure. So our ballot initiative isn't coming up until March. There's been a lot of conversation. Yeah, that's okay. Because there's been a lot of conversation about when TARDA will be on the ballot, because it's really no secret that this is a necessity. It's something that the TARDA's been trying to do for several years. But what's going to happen this week, the board meets on Thursday, and they're going to be considering a resolution, and this will be for March. And this is going to be for a property tax renewal. So there's a couple of reasons why, and I'll try to be as clear as possible because it can feel a little bit confusing. But this is a $1 million renewal, and it'll be for 10 years, and it'll bring in about $5.3 million a year. The reason we're asking for this is because we have our sights set on eventually making the switch to a sales tax, which is something a lot of other transit agencies in the state of Ohio have already done. But we have to go on for a property tax first so that we can continue to operate at the level that we're operating now up until that point. It is essentially our safety net in the event that, one, the sales tax doesn't go next November, so a year from now, or, in that in-between time, we won't have to make any more cuts to service, which our passengers have felt, especially over the last almost year, 2 years now. So we need that to be in place so that we can continue to operate as is. But our sights are ultimately set on November of 2020 when we're going to be making that request for the switch to a sales tax. And I can talk a little bit more about that, but I want to stop to make sure you don't have any questions.
Yeah, I need to go to Kroger, or there are a whole bunch of errands I need to get done by the 5th because the first of the month was on Friday, and there are consequences if things don't get done by the 5th, and the weekend is just a big bite out of that, That's going to land me with a whole bunch of places to go, and it's going to be a very long, tiring, and probably painful day, Monday and Tuesday.
So now you're saying that because there's been cuts to weekend service?
There's no service on Sundays, and it cuts off at 5 on Saturdays. If you have a job, you're in real trouble. You got to have a taxi or an Uber or something for that day, or you're losing the job.
And that's exactly why they're looking towards sales tax, because what that will do is, opposed to what our current property taxes are doing, is bring in a significant amount more a year than what we're getting. So you figure that sales tax goes into place, your system will then be countywide. So you'll be able to get anywhere in Lucas County, and then, of course, Rossburg, because they're one of our member communities. But one of the first things that will be implemented, should that pass, is going to be the restoration of those services that have been lost. So you're talking about holidays, Sundays, the expansion of hours. So second shift workers, third shift workers will be able to get where they need to go. It's something that has needed to be done for a long time, but funding has just made it impossible, which is why they've had to make the cutbacks that have had to be made.
And is it true that
I'm sorry.
Sorry, is it true that that's actually cheaper for the consumer than the property tax?
So what that'll do is that it's going to lessen the property tax burden, because if the sales tax goes into effect, then you won't have to pay those property taxes that you've been paying to fund TARDA, forever.
Right.
So those will eventually be phased out. And then, as you move forward, you will be, paying for it in a different way, but it will certainly cost less in that property tax burden.
Right.
Well, it would be.
I have some numbers here.
So for
Let me see if
homeowners,
maybe.
probably cheaper.
And it would be spreading the burden out because everybody pays sales tax, although not everybody pays property taxes. So.
Sure, it could be a visitor. If you have family in during the holidays and they go to the grocery store, or they, maybe stop by a carryout or something like that, they're helping put some money towards that. So I guess you're looking at about 10 cents on a $20 purchase. So if that maybe helps put it in perspective a little bit when you're talking about a sales tax. But really that's essential if we want to make or provide a transportation service that makes sense not only for the people who need it, but also for people who maybe don't need it but would like to use it.
And also it might not take you, if you ride the bus, 3 hours to get to the grocery store and back. So, that I'd pay 10 cents for,
Right. No, absolutely. And that's a huge thing. We don't want the passengers to be sitting on the bus for hours just because, they, like you said, need to make a trip to Kroger or, wherever they may need to go. Right, right. And, that's one of the other things, too, that should that pass in November of 2020, the first thing we'll do is look at ordering new buses because most of our fleet is eligible for retirement but still on the road because really there's no other option. So they will immediately start ordering new buses to put out there, but then they'll also do a clean route study. So they'll take a look at the routes, what makes sense, what doesn't, get community feedback, get rider feedback, and figure out, how they can make those trips shorter, maybe how they can use fewer buses. There's just a lot of opportunity, but we have to get to that point first, and we have to stop in March to get that renewal and then keep our sights set on November.
I've known a number of especially disabled people who have had issues because the lifts are old on the buses, the lift not extending to begin with, or this one woman, God forbid, actually got trapped halfway up on the lift for an hour. That was bad. And they tell me that's because some of the lifts are just old, so they can be made to work, but it takes constant tinkering.
Absolutely. Our maintenance crews work, I say around the clock, but they do a great job trying to keep the vehicles that we have up and running. But it's definitely an uphill battle, and that's why, we're really trying to work hard to educate people to let them know why this is so important. And that's kind of where we're at.
So we've got saving energy by keeping cars off the roads. We've got making our whole society accessible to people who maybe can't drive for some reason.
Who then can get jobs and not necessarily have to be on disability in many cases.
Right.
Saving us money.
And
you talk about people wanting the jobs. 60% of the people that you see riding Charter are going to and from work, or they're going to and from school. So that's half of the ridership.
Yeah, that's a big myth that I hear a lot from people like, we have to take charters for the disabled people. It's just for the elderly and disabled. They can just take taxis. No, there are a lot of people who depend on that to maintain their employment and keep living indoors.
Yeah, and certainly there are, local companies who, are struggling to get people to come to work because it's not on the bus line or, the times don't line up. So, like I mentioned, if there's opportunity, it's just a matter of getting to that point.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I wanted to ask you something. Our listenership, this show gets rebroadcast on WGRN in Columbus. And Columbus has an interesting program. They actually offer free bus passes to people who work downtown. And it's actually funded by the downtown businesses. And according to their figures, it's actually resulted in a 15% drop in cars going downtown because they found it's cheaper to do that than to try to build tons more parking garages, since parking is a big problem down there. Any chance something like that might could be tried in Toledo?
Yeah, I think any time that you can partner with the local businesses and some of the companies that are downtown, especially as we've seen the economic growth over the years, it's certainly a possibility. And I think once we're able to get our funding straight, there's, I guess, a little bit more confidence from some of the other businesses in Toledo to say, yeah, we want to get on board with this. But I think until we can make sure that we're stable as an organization, we can't move forward too quickly on that. But it's certainly something that is always talked about. You talk about that service in Columbus. I have family down there, and actually my aunt takes advantage of that, and she loves it because it makes her trip from Pataskala to downtown so much easier. But yeah, I mean, that's something that we want to do. Those partnerships, I think, are key in making or designing a transportation service that makes sense for Toledo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think people who aren't in the habit of using public transportation don't actually realize how nice it is to not have to worry about driving.
Definitely.
Yeah, when you're there and someone else is doing all the work, you could read, you could listen to music, you could go on your cell phone. It's really nice to be able to just take a ride like that. So, audience, 866-240-1065, 866-240-1065. If you have any questions about TARTA for our guest, Amy Mohr. Now, I know in some of the suburban communities around Toledo, there's been a push to move away from public transportation, to drop out of TARTA. In fact, Perrysburg did eliminate its public transportation for about a year, and we were very instrumental. Well, the Wood County Green Party helped bring that back, although the form it's in, it turns out, is more expensive than when they were a member of TARTA. But during that year of zero public transportation, there were a lot of people who were just essentially stranded in their houses, unable to get out, even to do essentials like buying food or getting medicine and things.
Right. I think, public transportation, it kind of offers that bit of independence. It gives people a chance to get out on their own if they can't do it otherwise. We talk about our TARP service, and sure, a lot of these people, maybe they have family in the area, their kids, hey, we can take you, but I think there's just something about being able to do it on your own that makes all the difference in quality of life and just kind of that independence factor.
Yeah. Okay, well, so you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but what kind of long-term dreams does TARTA have? In other words, if TARTA had access to unlimited funds, all the money it needed, what sort of things would you guys be doing?
Oh, I think so many things, right? The options are endless. But we talked a little bit about, taking a good hard look at our routing and what makes sense. Like, how can we connect people in Toledo to Sylvania Township or to Berkey or Waterville? How can you do that without spending an extreme amount of time on the bus? So really looking at that routing system. I think also high on that list is new equipment, technology that makes sense for the people that are on the bus, so Wi-Fi, things like that, but also creating an environment for our operators, something that's comfortable for them, because a lot of these people they're driving buses that should have been off the road a long time ago, because like I said, 60% of our fleet is eligible for retirement. Some of those buses have 500,000 plus miles on them, and they're still going because we have no other choice. So I think that would be great. Being able to restore some of those services, Sundays, holidays, expansion of services, bringing back the walleye and mud hen shuttle. We hear a lot from the senior community. They love that option because they live in Waterville, but they want to catch a mud hens game. And, maybe they don't like to drive at night. Maybe downtown's a little bit more intimidating to them than it used to be. So they're not comfortable driving downtown or trying to find parking. So to be able to restore some of the fun things that we were able to offer before, to get them to downtown Toledo to spend their money at local businesses and things like that.
Fade it out for a second there. Well, we're here on For a Green Future. We're definitely pulling for you, TARTA. It seems that the communities that do invest heavily in public transportation are more prosperous communities, and I don't think this is a chicken and egg thing. I don't think it's just the fact that a less prosperous community can't afford to put as much in. I think it's that investing more in the public transportation creates more prosperity. for everybody.
Yeah, I kind of suspect it's not actually a coincidence that, your larger, more prosperous cities are the ones that invested in public transit.
Yeah, there's all kinds of statistics out there that say, home values are better when they're close to public transportation lines, and the economic return that you get when you invest into public transportation, I think it's every $4, $1 back, or maybe I'm flipping the numbers. But it's there. There's statistics that support that. So, we're looking at that robust system. And of course, it's always on our radar, and we have big dreams. But in order to get there, we're going to need a little bit of help, and we're going to have to make some changes.
One myth that I hear a lot from people is that we can't have a good public transit in Toledo because it's a small city, so there's not enough money in the budget. How much of TARTA funding actually comes out of the city budget?
I don't think anything comes out of the city of Toledo budget to fund TARTA.
No, it's all levies, isn't it?
Yeah, it's levies. We get federal grants and state money.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that comes, from government center or anything like that supports public transit. So
yeah, I've heard that from people
we heavily rely on that.
I've heard that from environmentalists even, People really do not know how it works.
Right, and sometimes it can get confusing because there's all these different funding sources, and trying to make sense of that for some can be daunting, I'm sure.
Like the other myth that they could have more buses because they built that nice train station or bus station downtown.
Are you talking about the transit hub or?
No, the thing the thing where they moved tarps. They moved tarps down by the railway station, but that's like I think like you get totally separate building grants from that. You can't use that to pay more drivers or get more buses, right?
Sure. Yeah, people see that, we get grant funding, and well, why can't you do this? Just, spend it on your staff or spend it on new buses. But that money is specifically set aside for specific projects. I mean, we would love to be able to use it however we wanted. The state says, here's $1 million and spend it where you want. But that's unfortunately just not how the system works. And a lot of those buildings, like you mentioned, they were 100% federally funded through grants that were specifically set aside for infrastructure and things like that.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, before I let you go, Amy, thank you very much for being on the show. But I think Rebecca has one little thing she wants to mention, since she is a frequent writer of TARTA, and so there's one little aspect that she wanted to talk about.
Okay.
So yeah. Have you ever actually been down to the new hub and attempted to cross from one side of Huron to the other to get your bus? Because I have, and it's bloody terrifying. Yeah, it's definitely something that our transportation department is looking at. They have done some, I don't know if this is a technical term, so I apologize, but speed studies. They're trying to figure out how fast cars are going down Huron now that it's been converted to two ways, which was done in conjunction with the construction that we did at the former Goodwill building. But they're looking into that. They're trying to figure out ways that, they can make it safer. That'd
we try
be good.
really hard. Yeah, certainly. We try hard in our department, because a lot of what we do in the community relations department is public outreach, getting information to the passengers and things like that. So we try hard to, little reminders that might seem like common sense, like use the crosswalk, things like that. So I think right now it's just a matter of pushing that information, but absolutely that is a concern that is being taken seriously, and they're trying to figure out how they can make that a little bit better with, as many passengers as we have coming and going from the transit hub.
Also, it's really scary and isolated up there. There's not very good lighting after dark. You're not within view of anyone but other transit riders, really. If somebody's bothering you, there's kind of no one to run to.
Right. Well, we do have Toledo police officers that work with us inside the hub. You haven't?
No. They might be inside the building, but they're not out on Huron Street.
Okay, so yeah, that I wasn't sure of. Every time I'm there, I'll be honest, it's during business hours, and typically there's an officer or two that's there. I'm not sure, as far as their contract goes, how often they're supposed to be outside. But when you talk about some of the lighting issues and things like that, there is a phase 2 of construction and a phase 3 that will be starting to take place here shortly, and a lot of that deals with the outside of the building.
Good.
So
That'd
there
be
are
good.
plans in place. Yeah, there are plans in place to sort of get that going. But like we mentioned before, this is funded through federal grants, and sometimes the federal government moves slowly. So we're hoping to have some of that done by this time next year. It just sort of depends how those funds come in and when.
All right. Well, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I totally hear what you're saying. You know, we hear it a lot, and, you know, we do the best we can to try to get information out there and try to, you know, deal with these concerns as they come in.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Amy. And maybe one thing you could just consider closing that last block of Huron to cars altogether and make it just for buses.
Yeah.
But that's just
It's
an
a
idea.
thought.
So, all right. Well, thank you very much, Amy. It's been a pleasure. And we'll definitely try to have you on closer to the March referendum so that we can revisit this issue. So thanks.
Yep. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great day. All right. That was Amy Mohr from the Toledo Area Regional Transit Authority. All right. So now it's time to hear from our wonderful sponsors. And Wood County, one of our sponsors is the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats, and they lead outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects 20 parks and nature preserves all around Wood County, which are open from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every single day of the year. They have a website. It's wcparks.org, and they have an app, which is great. You can download it on your phone. It's WC Parks. Just go to the App Store and search for WC Parks. And they have a phone number. You can call them at any time at 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. And this looks like it's going to be a beautiful day to get out to the park. So definitely get out your app, see what's going on, and go take a walk in one of the Wood County parks. Our other sponsor is DeMar Consulting. DeMar Consulting is a computer consulting business. They will come to your home and help you with your home computer problems. Maybe you've got a computer that finally the power supply has given up, that you go to turn it on and it just makes a weird clicking noise or doesn't do anything, or maybe one little light flickers, and this is just a sad thing, and all your data's there on that hard drive. Sometimes you don't need to buy a whole new computer. Sometimes you just need to replace that faulty power supply. And people at DeMar Consulting can do that for you. They can also help you with software problems if you have computers having trouble linking up to your network, or if your printer's not talking to your computer, or if you need a new computer, they can actually design one for you. They can build one for you from scratch. And sometimes that will turn out to be cheaper than going to the store and getting one that isn't quite suited to your needs. So 2 ways to get a hold of DeMar Consulting. You can call them or text them at 419-973-3000. That's 419-973-3000. Or check out their website, demarconsulting.com. That's DEMARE, then the word consulting, and then .com. And that for all your home computing needs.
And could we use any new sponsors to help pay for the show, Joe?
We sure could. If you've got a business that has anything even remotely to do with ecology or the environment, we would love to have you on as a sponsor. And you can check us out by going to the website joedemar4agreenfuture.org. That's JOEDEMARE, then FOR, spell out for, joedemar4agreenfuture.org, and you can send us an email, or you can call or text us at 419-973-5841, and we would be happy to promote your ecologically or environmentally responsible business on the air.
Somehow I felt like I had a little hunch that maybe we would.
Yes, we definitely would.
Want to do that, yeah.
And people can also become patrons of this program. In fact, we got a nice donation this week. I wanted to thank Jack Slanina from Youngstown. He's an internet listener. He goes to our YouTube channel every week and downloads the show. And he sent us a nice little gift this week. And anyone who wants to become a regular sponsor can go to patreon.com and just search for a Green Future, and we'll pop up there. And there's ways you could give like a monthly donation. And a monthly donation start at $1, which we call that the everybody line because almost everybody can afford $1 a month. And we definitely appreciate our patrons. They're partly why we've been able to stay on the air all this time. And we're coming up on a year. It's not quite a year, but it's been a great year. You know, we've talked to people from all over the world on issues, all kinds of issues, environmentally speaking, and we're able to do that because of our sponsors and our patrons. So if you like the show and you like to keep listening, consider becoming one or the other. So
Hear, hear.
But on the other hand, if you're a polluting business, like if you a lawn care business that sprays pesticides, or if you're, you know, the Sun Oil Refinery there, we're not interested in advertisements from, First Energy. No, thank you. But, you know, let's say you've got a car dealership and you're trying to sell hybrids. We'll happily advertise and talk about your hybrids, but
there you go.
But not your big 18-mile or 12 mile per gallon pickup trucks. No, we won't be promoting those on this show. But we're not terribly picky. So if what you do is even remotely environmentally acceptable, we'd be happy to advertise here. All right. So now I wanted to change gears a little bit and talk a little bit about something we've talked before about greenwashing, about the idea that a lot of Republicans and conservatives specifically want to appear like they're environmentally responsible, like they understand the need to shift and so forth. But you really have to look at their actual actions to, never listen to what a politician says. I'm in politics myself as a Green Party person, but never listen to the promises, the statements. Always go straight to the actions. What do they actually do? And the Republican Party in Ohio, and specifically Governor DeWine, have been saying a lot of things about, how they really want alternative energy and they want clean energy. But then they go and pass bills like House Bill 6, which penalize alternative energy and promote coal and nuclear power. But they're still saying, what they were still saying is, oh yeah, we did House Bill 6, but that's just because we needed to save those jobs at Davis-Besse, but we really want wind and solar. And they even created a citizens group. It's called Conservatives for Clean Energy or something like that. It's got like 8,000 members on Facebook to try to create the impression that they actually do care about the environment and solar power and wind power and things of that nature. Well, there was an action taken not long ago that basically blows that whole thing out of the water. And environmentalists, we kind of saw this coming back in the spring. Governor DeWine appointed a fella named Sam Randazzo as head of the Public Utilities Commission, also called PUCO, Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. No, I'm not making a joke. It actually is called PUCO.
Although there's a joke there to be made. We're just saying.
Yeah. So what PUCO has a role in, they get to approve any proposed power generating plant. And so it's a big, long process that anybody who wants to build, let's say, a natural gas plant or a solar plant or put up a wind farm, you have to go through this big, long siting process. You have to do environmental studies. It could take 1.5 to 2 years. And when Governor DeWine appointed Sam Randazzo as chair of the Public Utilities Commission, people were a little worried because his job before that was as a lobbyist in opposition to solar power. And they're like, he was working specifically for a corporation that was funded to fight solar energy. in Ohio. And so people were like, this doesn't look good.
And he might be hoping to go back to that when his term of office is too, as also sometimes happens with the lobbyists who get a government position and then go back into lobbying.
Right. Well, about 2 weeks ago, it was in the middle of October, a solar field project, 50 megawatts or so, came up for review by the Public Utilities Commission, and it had gone through that whole siting process, and this was like the final step that typically after a company's done all those studies and so forth, the PUCO then approves it, and then they go on to get their other permissions and permits that they need. Well, Sam Randazzo at that meeting said, well, I'm going to, literally this is a quote, I'm going to depart from the normal procedure here. And then he proceeded to rattle off a bunch of things that sound environmentally responsible. He said, well, they haven't talked about glare, and they haven't talked about protecting these endangered species that are there. I'm worried about them. And
glare?
So, yeah, glare off of solar panels. And it's too close to the property line of a neighbor. And he just rattled off all these things, all this, which sounded plausible, except that those are the things that are supposed to come up during the whole review procedure.
Yeah, I would think, yeah.
So he just grabbed a whole bunch of new stuff out of the air and said, and therefore we're going to reject this application. And everyone was shell-shocked because this is a departure. This has not happened before, that companies would go through the entire process, spend the millions of dollars necessary, then get a whole bunch of new stuff thrown at them, and without explanation or without resolution, their application is just not approved. So it's not clear if it's going to be, if they fix those things, if it will be approved, or if it'll be even ever considered again by the PUCO. And that one act, that one meeting, basically throws Ohio's entire solar energy industry into question. Because whenever you do an investment, a multi-million-dollar investment in a big capital project like a solar field, you're taking a risk. You're gambling with your money. Things could go wrong. Electricity prices could go this way or that way. You don't know that you're going to make your money back. You've got a pretty good idea you will, or else you're not going to risk $10 million of your own money to build this thing unless you think you're going to get more back. But one of the most important questions when you're considering building a huge capital investment like this, what is the attitude of the government towards your project? Because if the government is in opposition, they can throw up all kinds of roadblocks, and it often will never happen. You can waste all your whole $10 million doing studies after studies, and if you never satisfy the government, you never get to actually make the investment. Even though you've taken out leases on the property, you've risked all this capital. And what Sam Randazzo and therefore Governor DeWine, who appointed him, and therefore the Republicans that have complete control of Ohio's legislature have done here is they've said to the solar industry, get out. We don't want you.
We're just going to make up new rules that didn't go through the legislature or anything against you.
Right.
Because some guy is just going to make them up. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now the Republicans might, balk at this. They might say, oh, no, we want solar energy. We want
But never jam today, basically.
But again, when evaluating statements like that, you have to look at their actions. And DeWine took the action of appointing an anti-solar energy lobbyist to head the PUCO, and that guy has now continued his crusade against solar power.
And he still got his job, so I guess DeWine's okay with that.
Yeah, there's no repercussion for him for essentially.
Not even a slap on the wrist.
Not that I know of. Nothing that's been made public. No angry letter from the governor. Although, there might be a letter or two from a shocked Republican legislator here or there.
Right.
But this is not really a surprise. This is very clear and deliberate, slap in the face of the solar industry in Ohio. And it's just another example that at this time, the government of Ohio is in the thrall of the coal producers and the nuclear power industry. And it's a terrible thing. It's just another piece of the puzzle, another part of the pattern. It just shows that no matter what they say, no matter how often they claim, oh, we want solar energy and clean energy, yeah, we're Republicans, but we get it. No, you have to look at what politicians do.
Again, also echoing the tactics of the anti-choice movement, who after Toledoans fought tooth and nail for several years to get a transfer agreement so our last abortion clinic could stay open, the governor's office was just like, okay, well, we're just going to wait an indefinite amount of time to sign that. Mm-hmm. To renew because they technically, because they didn't have the transfer agreement, their license to do some kind of procedures was on hold or was suspended. And then when they came up with a transfer agreement, which was supposed to be the holdup, the governor's office was just like, oh, well, we'll sign that someday in a few months, maybe.
Mm. All right. Well, what do you think? 866-240-1065. Would anyone like to leap to the defense of Governor DeWine and like Haraz Ganbari, who, after that guy down there in Wood County who was so instrumental in pushing House Bill 6 through, and then right after that he took a big tour of a solar plant to show, oh, he really does care, but
right.
I don't know. 866-240-1065. We've got time for a call, and we'd love to have one. But one thing we're sure of here at For a Green Future is that these things will get worked out, that we will actually eventually get solar power and wind power and shut down the nukes and shut down the coal. And one reason we're so certain of this is that every week we get a letter from the year 2299 from my great-great-granddaughter who is living in a time when they have figured all this stuff out and are living in a clean, sustainable society. And here's this week's letter. Yeah, every week there's a flash of photons next to my bed, and this letter from the future appears. So here's this week's letter. Dear GGG, not much is happening here on the Kola Peninsula. The drilling project is still stalled. Michael is still working on the problem 16 hours a day, running simulations and testing different drill designs. Since he's so busy, I've started hanging out with a friend of mine named Marcy. I don't think I told you about her before. She's a geologist, so she's just as involved in the drilling problem as Michael. But she has a rule that no matter how busy she is, she always takes a 2-hour lunch break and has some fun in the middle of the day. The difference this makes is pretty amazing. Michael keeps getting more and more haggard looking. He keeps forgetting to shave. Sometimes he wears the same clothes for 3 or 4 days. Marcy is working just as hard, but she looks great. I guess one thing did happen this past week. Marcy and I were out for a midday walk. The sun sets about 4 o'clock in the afternoon here, so it was already low in the sky, and it's about 0 degrees Fahrenheit with lots of snow. Anyway, we saw this weird shifting shape on the horizon. It took me a minute to realize that it was a sleigh being pulled by reindeer. It was Igor. He pulled up to us, bells jingling. He said he wanted to return my visit from last week, so he gave Marcy and me a ride around the bay on his sleigh, and then I gave him a tour of the project. It was a lot of fun. I always feel comfortable with Igor, but after he left, I was kind of confused about how I felt about the whole thing. Well, I'm not confused about how I feel about you, great-great-grandpa. Hang in there. Love, Marie, I.
Aw.
So, potentially some trouble brewing there for Michael. I don't know.
Jeez.
Yeah. But, that's...
Work-life balance.
Yeah, exactly. That is part of... I mean, it's all connected. I mean, the fact that those of us who have jobs, work ourselves to death here in this society, that means that we use more energy, that we don't need to be working as hard as we are, those of us that are working. I mean, the people that basically it's all connected. If we balance out our personal lives, our work and our play, and at the same time we're balancing out our natural lives, in other words, the way we interact with the environment, we can get there. We could do this. We can have a society where people don't have to, destroy the environment in order to make a living.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, I just heard Japan, for example, they're at a 90% recycling rate. We could be there too.
Yeah.
They have to do it because they have a small country. And there's no room for landfills. But just because we have room doesn't mean we should be making landfills.
No. Aren't we sending a lot of our garbage to China or something, and China doesn't want it, so they're dumping it in the ocean? Or I hear crazy stuff.
Yeah, we were sending all our plastics to China.
Ah, okay.
All our recyclable plastics, and then China just said, as part of this whole trade war, China said we're just not taking those anymore, and so we're now drowning in our own plastic, which some people might say is justice, but of course the real solution would be to have plastics that are decomposable, made out of things like corn oil instead of petroleum. And all these things are possible, and all these things can happen, and we're confident will happen because the choice is collapse. The choice is environmental collapse, and
your lips to God's ears, Joe.
Yeah, we're not gonna accept that. Gosh darn it. So, all right. Well, it's been a good show. Thank you all for listening so much. Rebecca and I really appreciate your listenership. And thanks to our able technician, Russell. another competently handled show. So
Russell needed another hour from daylight savings time.
Yeah. Maybe if we got 2 hours plus and then only 1 hour negative.
Yeah.
That might be good.
That'd be cool.
I don't know if that'll work out long term, though. All right, well, that's it for this week. This is Joe DeMar.
And Rebecca Wood.
Signing off.
Run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time